In the earliest breaths of the cosmos, when the silk of the night sky was still soft and unshaped, ancient storytellers whispered of two lights born from the same celestial pulse, Bakuya and Hakuya, the twin souls who drifted along the milky river long before the stars learned to sing. Their myth, old enough to blur into the origins of time itself, begins with a shimmering emptiness, a void yearning to become more than darkness. Within that emptiness, a single tremor of longing echoed, and from that longing came radiance, soft and trembling like the first inhale of a waking world. Bakuya emerged as a warm glow, a luminous ribbon that curled across the void like the first lantern carried into a silent night. Hakuya followed as a cooler gleam, pale and silver, stretching into exquisite arcs that mirrored the calm of deep water. They were not opposites, but harmonies, two notes that resonated across the eternity around them, yet nothing in the newborn universe had prepared them for each other. Their myth says that even before they could see, they felt, and even before they could speak, they knew. The heavens at that time were untamed, filled with drifting constellations still in search of meaning. Each star pulsed with curiosity, learning its own rhythm, its own glow, its own name. Winds of stardust moved like slow tides, carrying fragments of future worlds, future lives, future desires. In that boundless expanse, Bakuya wandered freely, illuminating the space around her with a golden hue, tracing arcs of warmth through the forming sky. The elders of creation, massive spirits carved from nebulae and comet fire, watched her with reverence. She was a spark of promise, a light meant to guide the newborn celestial realms. They believed her existence alone was enough to steady the growing universe, for her glow was the gentle heartbeat in the dark. Hakuya, meanwhile, drifted farther from the center of creation. His was a quieter glow, a softness woven from moonlit frost and the pale shimmer of dawn. He moved like a whisper carried by a breeze, exploring the calm edges where darkness pooled like sleeping water. The ancients assumed his role would be to soothe, to cool, to preserve the delicate balance between brilliance and shadow. For ages, though ages had not yet been measured, they lived in separate spans of the sky, shaping the heavens without crossing paths. Yet, myth insists that destiny had already been carved into the fabric of starlight. Each time Bakuya cast her glow, a faint reflection shimmered in some far-off place, as if her warmth touched someone unseen. Each time Hakuya drifted through the velvet dark, a spark of gold flickered across his path, like a pulse urging him to follow. The universe, in its infancy, knew the shape of yearning, even before it understood the meaning of love. And so it wove an invisible thread between these two glimmers. Their movements grew unconsciously synchronized, their pulses echoing each other. Constellations began to tilt, listening to their silent call and response, and the Milky River itself began to shape a curve meant to guide them into crossing orbits.
When they finally approached one another for the first time,
Myths say the sky trembled, not with fear, but with anticipation. Bakuya's warm light stretched further than ever before, curious, playful, irresistibly drawn. Hakuya's cool shimmer flowed like a tide responding to the moon. As they neared the same corner of the celestial river, the stardust around them began to glow brighter, spinning in slow spirals as if welcoming a long-awaited union. They did not speak with words, they had none yet, but their radiance blended, soft gold brushing against silver, and the heavens brightened in a way that even the oldest stars paused. It is said that this first meeting awakened emotions so potent that cosmic laws, still unshaped and vulnerable, bent without protest. Warmth embraced calm, and calm softened warmth, their energies entwining like two breaths drawn into the same longing. It was the universe's very first act of tenderness. But deep within that tenderness lay the beginning of tragedy, for nothing in the celestial order understood limitation until that moment. The merging of their lights, beautiful as it was, created ripples that spread across the firmament. Nebulae surged brighter, constellations shifted, and a tremor ran through the forming cosmic paths. The ancients saw these signs with awe and fear. They recognized the depth of connection forming between Bakuya and Hakuya, and while they cherished the harmony it brought, they feared a collapse of all structure if the lovers' radiance grew too intense. In those primordial days, the universe was fragile, easily swayed, easily overwhelmed. Their union, though breathtaking, threatened to pull too much energy into one place, leaving other realms barren. So the ancients whispered a rule into being, a law of balance, separation, and distance. They decreed that the two lights must never touch again, for their combined glow was too powerful for the young cosmos to withstand. It was the first forbidden bond, the first boundary etched, not from cruelty, but from desperate cosmic necessity. Bakuya and Hakuya, however, had already awakened the ache of closeness. Even when their paths were forcibly divided, they continued to feel each other across the gulf of stars. Bakuya's golden arcs would occasionally shimmer with a trembling longing, dimming gently as if missing a piece of herself. Hakuya's pale glow acquired a faint warmth at its edges, like frost remembering the touch of fire. Their yearning became woven into the fabric of night, subtle but persistent. Wherever Bakuya traveled, she carried an echo of silver within her glow. Wherever Hakuya drifted, the shadow of gold followed like a secret. Their separation became the first sorrow of the heavens, a melancholy so old and vast that later civilizations would unknowingly recreate its shape in their own longing stories. Ancient observers, the spirits who shaped planets and sculpted constellations, began to notice that the universe itself remembered the lovers' closeness. Each year, as the celestial river slowly shifted, there came a moment when Bakuya's warmth and Hakuya's calm would arc toward each other again, brought into alignment by the persistent curvature of fate. Though they still could not touch, their lights would graze the same cosmic field, shimmering close enough to sense each other's presence. The heavens would glow softly during these alignments, and the milky river would ripple with delicate waves of gold and silver. These brief reunions were bittersweet, filled with yearning, trembling with the memory of forbidden closeness, but beautiful enough to make the sky seem alive with emotion. From this cycle came the myth's core lesson, that love, even restrained by the laws of the universe, continues to shape destinies through sheer persistence. As the ages passed, mortals began to look upward and sense the emotion hidden in the stars. They saw the alternating glimmers of gold and silver, drifting apart yet bending always toward reunion, and they formed stories to explain their dance. They imagined Bakuya as a radiant goddess of light, whose laughter warmed the nights, and Hakuya as a serene celestial guardian, whose presence soothed restless souls. They believed that when the two neared each other, lovers on earth felt their hearts stir with longing. Poets wrote that the sky held a memory of a touch so powerful it could still be felt in the pulse of every human desire. And as these stories traveled across generations, softened and reshaped by countless tongues, the myth endured, its emotional core still intact, still shimmering with ancient yearning. Thus, the introduction to their legend stands as a reminder of a cosmos born not only from creation, but from desire, a universe that learned tenderness through two distant lights seeking each other. A night sky that still remembers the ache of separation and the sweetness of reunion. And beneath that vast celestial tapestry, every mortal gaze upward becomes part of the same old story, a quiet recognition that even the stars themselves once longed, once reached, once loved beyond their limits. Bakuya was born of radiance, yet her glow was not the harsh brilliance of a burning sun. It was a gentler light, golden, warm, and fluid, spreading across the heavens like a silk ribbon unfurling in slow motion. Her presence softened the very fabric of the cosmos. Wherever she drifted, nebulae bloomed brighter, constellations awakened from their dormant slumber, and newborn stars flickered as if seeking her approval. She carried an aura that whispered comfort, a glow that offered direction in a universe still uncertain of its shape. But hidden beneath her brightness was a vulnerable core, a quiet fear that her light might one day consume more than it healed, or that her glow might be seen as a burden rather than a gift. This fear made her gentle, precise, and cautious, shaping her into a being who offered warmth but rarely allowed herself to be held by it. Despite her beauty, or perhaps because of it, Bakuya carried a profound loneliness. Radiance drew admiration, yes, but also distance. The ancients revered her too much to approach her closely. They bowed, praised, or sought guidance, but never intimacy. She spent eons illuminating the drifting banks of stardust, shaping cosmic tides with delicate precision. But no one touched her. No one met her glow with their own. It made her long for something she could not name at the time, a softness in return, a presence that would not shrink from her light. She yearned for a closeness that would not melt beneath her warmth,
for a gaze that would not be blinded by her luminance. Her longing, though quiet, was persistent, like a heartbeat beneath silk. Hakuya, by contrast, was formed from the quietest shimmer in the void, not oppressive darkness, but the subtle glow of a hidden moon. His essence flowed like silvery water, calm and cool, soothing the restless storms of the early universe. Where Bakuya ignited, Hakuya harmonized. His touch eased the trembling of newborn stars, cradling them in a quiet serenity that allowed them to find their rhythm. In him dwelt a tranquil strength, the kind that did not announce itself, but made its presence known through stillness. His glow did not demand attention, it invited reflection. Those who drifted near him found themselves slowed, softened, returned to equilibrium. Yet his calm carried its own vulnerability. His serenity was often misunderstood as detachment, his silence mistaken for coldness. The elders saw him as a sentinel meant to balance the cosmos, a guardian who must remain unshaken by passion or desire. But beneath that expectation lay a heart capable of profound depth. He felt more intensely than he showed. Every fluctuation in stardust, every tremor in the cosmic winds, every shift in the warmth of the heavens left an imprint on him. He absorbed the emotions around him so quietly that no one ever imagined he needed someone to absorb his in return. And though his glow was soft, it carried a hidden longing to be seen not as a distant moon, but as a being worthy of closeness. If Bakuya was the warmth that stirred creation, Hakuya was the cool breath that allowed it to settle. Their differences were not contrasts in opposition, but two halves of an unspoken harmony. Light and shadow, desire and restraint, warmth and calm. The cosmos had crafted them with complementary intentions long before either knew the meaning of companionship. But the celestial laws had never foreseen what might happen when those two harmonies finally met. Bakuya first sensed Hakuya's presence before she truly saw him. She felt a faint cooling ripple brushing the edges of her warmth, like a gentle hand steadying a trembling pulse. It startled her, for nothing in the universe had ever soothed her glow. Everything either absorbed it or retreated. But this touch, this subtle tide, held her gently. It balanced her. She dimmed slightly, instinctively, leaning into the sensation without understanding why. Her golden arcs quivered with curiosity. Hakuya, on the other hand, felt her warmth surging before he glimpsed her form. It was not overwhelming. It was welcoming. Her presence spread through him like a sunrise touching the surface of still water. His silver shimmer trembled, a rare reaction he could neither suppress nor hide. He turned toward the sensation instinctively, following it with the quiet certainty of tides drawn by an unseen moon. Though he knew nothing of her yet, he felt recognition, not of identity, but of possibility. When they finally faced each other, it was not a grand cosmic event, but an intimate alignment of light. Bakuya's glow softened around him, curves of gold brushing gently against the calm of his silver. She did not burn him, he did not extinguish her. Instead, their energies hovered in suspended tension, like two breaths drawn toward each other, but not yet meeting. Their very essences seemed to pause, startled by the ease with which they coexisted. What formed between them was immediate, though restrained. Bakuya felt herself pulled toward him in a way she had never experienced. She sensed a promise of understanding, of balance, of being held without dimming. And Hakuya felt something stir beneath his calm, a warmth that did not disrupt him, but deepen him, a desire not to soothe, but to be near. Around them, the stardust brightened, swirling in soft spirals as if the universe itself held its breath.
Yet neither dared step closer. They did not know the nature of the tension that thrummed between them. Duty lingered at the edges of their awareness. Bakuya's responsibility to ignite creation. Hakuya's role in preserving its balance. Both understood instinctively that closeness between them might carry consequences, though neither could articulate why. So they held themselves in a delicate distance, close enough to feel each other's presence, far enough to pretend restraint. Bakuya was the first to speak, though speaking then was not done with words. Her light pulsed gently, sending warmth across the gap between them. It was a question, a greeting, a trembling curiosity. Hakuya responded by softening the edges of his glow until it resembled an embrace that never fully closed. She felt that softness like a touch, and something fluttered within her, a sensation of being met, not merely admired. Their chemistry deepened in silence. Bakuya circled him slowly, her golden arcs trailing behind like threads of desire she tried to hide. Hakuya remained still, but his silver glow rippled faintly each time she neared, betraying the pull he fought to restrain. Their essences brushed but never merged, creating sparks that rippled across the sky in delicate bursts of gold and silver. Those sparks later became the seeds of new stars, testimonies to their unspoken longing. Even without touching, their presence shaped each other. Bakuya learned to temper her radiance, not out of fear, but out of a desire to reach him more gently. Hakuya learned to let his calm soften, allowing warmth to seep into places he had kept still for eons. Their interaction was a tender dance of withheld impulses, each motion filled with a longing they barely understood. And yet, beneath that tenderness lay a growing ache. Bakuya felt it first, the way her glow yearned to press closer, to merge with the silver shimmer that steadied her. Hakuya felt it too, the impulse to drift nearer, to let her warmth fill the quiet hollows inside him. But both hesitated. Duty tugged at them, reminding them of the roles they were meant to fulfill. Desire tugged harder, whispering promises that felt older than destiny. So their connection simmered in tension, restrained yet consuming, distant yet impossibly intimate. A bond formed not through touch, but through the ache of not touching. And though the ancients watched with cautious eyes, the universe itself leaned closer, sensing the beginning of a longing that would one day shake the heavens.
The first fracture in their harmony did not come from within them, but from the watching cosmos. The ancients,
vast beings of stardust and primordial flame, regarded Bakuya and Hakuya's growing closeness with unease. Their energies, though gentle in isolation, began to stir unpredictable reactions when their paths overlapped. Galaxies trembled with faint distortions, and the celestial currents that shaped the young universe bent too eagerly toward their blended glow. It was subtle at first, barely noticeable ripples that only the oldest spirits could feel, but enough to awaken concern. The ancients whispered warnings across the star winds, cautioning that two lights so deeply drawn to one another might pull the very fabric of the heavens into collapse. In their fear, they carved a law into the cosmos. Bakuya and Hakuya must remain apart. The decree reverberated through the ether like a cold breeze, silencing the playful swirl of stardust around the pair. Bakuya felt the command as a sudden heaviness in her glow, as though golden chains settled around her warmth. Hakuya felt a chill ripple through his silver tide, a reminder that serenity was expected of him, not desire. The ancients did not speak to them directly. They simply reshaped the flows of the celestial rivers, pushing their paths apart with invisible walls. Where warmth once drifted easily into calm, distance now stretched like an endless horizon. At first, Bakuya did not understand. She approached Hakuya one night, her glow trembling with anticipation, only to find an unseen resistance, a barrier soft as mist, but firm enough to halt her steps. Her radiance pressed against it, spreading in a delicate pattern like light against glass, but it would not yield. Panic fluttered through her. She called out with a pulse of gold, and Hakuya responded immediately with a ripple of silver. But neither pulse could breach the divide. He tried drifting closer, but his shimmer faded where the barrier met him, dissolving like moonlight on water. They could see each other clearly, but there was now a realm between them where neither light nor shadow could cross. The realization struck Bakuya with a deep, aching shock. They were being kept apart. Hakuya felt the weight of the decree in a quieter, more suffocating way. The barrier didn't just stop him physically, it quieted his glow, dimming the warmth she had awakened within him. The universe demanded his stillness. Balance must remain undisturbed. His calm must be unbroken, his role unaltered. Yet every fiber of his being strained toward her. He felt himself unraveling in two directions, one pulling him back to a duty he had never questioned before, the other urging him toward a longing he had only just begun to understand.
Their separation gave birth to the first true conflict within either of them. For Bakuya, desire became a fire she could not contain.
She found herself wandering restlessly through the cosmos, tracing old pathways she once illuminated with joy. But each path felt hollow without his soft glow beside her. She shaped new stars to distract herself, ignited nebulae into brilliant blooms, but every creation carried the faint ache of incompleteness. Her warmth surged wildly at times, flaring brighter than intended, as though reaching for him, even when her mind tried to forget. She feared this intensity, feared what it meant, feared that the ancients had been right to keep them apart. And yet she also feared the alternative, living forever without feeling his stillness against her light. Hakuya's conflict was quieter, but no less intense. The more he tried to return to his duties, calming the tremors of the celestial winds, guiding drifting starlight back into order, the more he felt her absence as a cold ache in his core. He moved through the cosmos like a lonely tide, soothing storms with a gentleness that felt thinner than before, as if a part of him had been hollowed out. He tried to convince himself that serenity was enough, that the universe needed him steady, detached, undisturbed. But the memory of her warmth lingered like a sun still burning beneath his surface, refusing to be extinguished. Each time his glow dimmed to the silver calm expected of him, the edges flickered gold. Their longing grew sharper with each passing cycle. The barrier between them did not silence their connection, it magnified it. They began to sense one another across incredible distances. Bakuya could feel the subtle quiver of Hakuya's calm whenever he struggled, and her light would soften instinctively, dimming in a silent attempt to comfort him. Hakuya felt the surge of her radiance each time she grew restless, and silver ripples would pulse outward from him, seeking to reach her despite the divide. The more the cosmos pushed them apart, the more their energies intertwined in defiance. They met in secret ways the ancients could not fully prevent. There were rare moments when the cosmic currents shifted just enough for their paths to graze, not fully, not dangerously close, but near enough that they could feel each other's presence like a breath against the skin. These near encounters were intoxicating. The first time the barrier thinned enough for their lights to blend for a fraction of a heartbeat, the heavens brightened in a sudden shivering glow. Bakuya's warmth flared in a golden arc, brushing the edges of Hakuya's silver tide. He trembled with the shock of it, trembling so deeply that stars around them vibrated in their orbits. They separated again almost instantly, the barrier snapping back into place, but the memory lingered like a forbidden kiss.
Those moments were not frequent, yet each one deepened their desire. Bakuya began to search for them, drifting along the cosmic rivers in hopes of finding the precise curve where their paths might align. She knew the heavens were watching, knew she risked upsetting the delicate balance the ancients treasured, but her longing overpowered her caution. Hakuya, though more restrained, found himself pulled toward those alignments too. He moved with deliberate slowness, as if pretending to obey the laws that guided him, but his path always bent subtly toward her glow.
When their lights came close, even without touching, the tension between them grew palpable, vibrating through the space they shared. The internal conflict consumed them. Bakuya's radiance grew unstable at times, flickering between intense brightness and trembling softness. She feared she would lose herself, become too bright, too overwhelming, too wild. She feared becoming a danger to the very universe she guided. Yet every time she tried to dim her longing, the memory of Hakuya's quiet presence returned, soothing her enough to unravel her resolve. She could not be the light the cosmos wanted her to be without the calm he offered. Hakuya felt the same torment. His serenity cracked in small, almost imperceptible fractures. He found himself losing focus during moments that once came naturally. His glow rippled uncontrollably when he sensed her near, betraying emotions he had spent ages mastering. He feared what might happen if he slipped too far from his role, if he allowed desire to reshape him. Yet every time he tried to suppress the longing, the emptiness inside him deepened. Their conflict reached its height the night the cosmic barrier failed, just for a moment. A shifting storm of stardust swept across the heavens, carried by an ancient wind older than the law meant to keep them apart. The barrier wavered. Bakuya felt the tremor first and surged toward it instinctively, her light shimmering wildly with hope and fear. Hakuya sensed her movement too and rushed forward too, though each step defied everything he had been tasked to preserve. Their lights collided in a burst of gold and silver, so soft and trembling that it seemed the universe itself sighed. They didn't merge fully, not yet, but they touched, truly touched. The sensation was overwhelming. Bakuya felt herself melt into his calm, her warmth soaking into the cool depths of him. Hakuya felt her fire filling the hollows inside him, awakening emotions he had never dared to imagine. Their energies intertwined in forbidden intimacy, forming a harmony so complete it defied law and reason. It lasted only a moment, but that moment echoed through the heavens like thunder. Then the barrier reasserted itself, ripping them apart. The pain of that separation carved itself into their very cores. It was no longer longing, it was need. A need that the universe itself seemed determined to deny. Duty pulled them back into isolation. Desire pulled them toward each other with newfound ferocity. And somewhere deep in the cosmos, the balance trembled, sensing a love too powerful to contain.
The night unfolded like a vast trembling veil above the drifting ice, its stars glittering with a sharpness that felt almost sentient, as though they were watching the two souls below with aching anticipation. Sedna stood at the edge of the frozen ridge, her breath slipping from her lips in pale ribbons that curled into the wind. She felt the storm inside her heartbeat growing louder, a tide that had been rising since the first moment she had met him, since the first moment her loneliness had found an echo in another. The pull was irresistible, dangerous, and yet she felt herself surrendering even before he stepped toward her. He approached slowly, as if one wrong movement might shatter the fragile equilibrium holding the world together. His boots pressed lightly into the snow, each step a whisper of warmth in this kingdom of cold. When he finally reached her, he did not touch her. He simply stood near enough for her to feel the heat of him seeping through the frigid air like a forbidden promise. The silence between them quivered. Her hands trembled. His breath came in uneven waves, as though he were fighting himself, trying to hold back something immense. "You shouldn't be here," she murmured, though her voice lacked conviction. "My world is not meant for hearts like yours." "Then why," he whispered, "does it feel like I was made for it? For you?" Her eyes lifted to his, and the force of his gaze struck her like a warm wind carving through centuries of winter. She had known desire in the way the sea knew depth, endlessly, silently, without reaching the bottom. But never had it taken form like this. Never had it stood before her with trembling hands and a heartbeat she could almost hear. The stars flickered above them, as though bracing for what would follow. "You don't understand what I am," she said, her voice shaking. "What loving me costs." "I understand more than you think." He stepped closer. "And I'm tired of pretending I don't feel this." The wind howled suddenly, swirling snow around them in shimmering spirals. Her hair whipped across her face like black currents beneath the ice, and for an instant she looked both divine and unbearably human. His hand rose, then hesitated midair, suspended between restraint and surrender. That small tremor in him, the way he fought himself, made something inside her crack open. She reached up slowly, her fingers brushing the back of his hand with a lightness that felt like it could melt the ice beneath them.
The moment they touched, the world exhaled. The wind softened. The cold retreated just enough for heat to bloom between their palms. The stars brightened as though waking from sleep. Her heartbeat thundered in her chest, each pulse sending ripples across the ocean depths hidden under the frozen world. She felt the tremor in his fingers as he intertwined them with hers, pulling her closer until she could feel the warmth radiating from him, a warmth she had forgotten was possible. "Sedna," he breathed, her name breaking across his lips like a tide against stone. "Tell me not to cross this line and I'll stop. Just say it." She opened her mouth, but no sound came. She could not lie to herself, not now, not when the distance between them had thinned to the width of a heartbeat. His forehead pressed gently to hers, and her eyes fluttered closed. A sound, half sigh, half surrender, escaped her. She knew then that she was already lost. The ocean inside her surged upward, crashing against the last barriers she had built. "You can't stop," she whispered. And he didn't. Their lips met with a force that felt like the shattering of centuries, like ice breaking after a long, merciless winter. It was not gentle, not at first. It was hungry, desperate, an eruption of every suppressed longing, of every unspoken ache that had tormented them since the moment their fates had intertwined. His hands rose to cradle her face, his thumbs brushing her skin with reverence, while her fingers curled into his coat as though she feared he might dissolve into snow if she let go.
Heat spiraled through her, radiating outward, thawing places within her she had believed frozen forever. Her knees weakened, and he held her firmly, as though anchoring her against a world that suddenly felt unstable, too bright, too fragile. Their breaths mingled, warm and frantic, creating small clouds that mingled with the stars. When the kiss deepened, she felt something inside her unravel completely, a tether snapping and releasing her into the vastness of feeling she had denied for so long. He pulled back only for a moment, his forehead still pressed to hers. "He have wanted this," he gasped. "From the moment I saw you beneath the aurora, I tried to stop it. I tried to keep distance, but every night I felt you in my chest like a second heartbeat."
Her lips parted, but he kissed her again before she could speak. Slower this time, gentler, as though savoring every moment. His hands slid down her arms, warming her skin through layers of cold air. She shivered under his touch, not from the cold, but from the intensity of him, the way he held her like something sacred. Her pulse thrummed wildly, echoing through the ice, sending faint tremors into the deep where her essence mingled with the sea. She broke the kiss only long enough to whisper, "You're playing with forces you don't understand." "He'd then teach me," he replied, cupping her jaw. "Let me learn what it means to love you." Something in her broke open, a last fragile boundary. She reached up, sliding her hands around his neck, pulling him down into another kiss, one that glowed with a softer, deeper warmth. It was tender, almost fragile, but beneath it lay an ocean of desire stretching endlessly beneath the surface. Their bodies pressed close, sharing warmth, sharing breath, sharing the fire they had tried so desperately to contain. The frozen world around them responded. Cracks spread across the ice with sharp crystalline echoes. The sea beneath surged as though awakening, but neither of them pulled away. Not as the stars flared brighter, not as the ground trembled faintly, not as the cold retreated in a halo around their entwined forms. They were lost to each other, fully, dangerously, beautifully lost. When they finally parted, breathless and trembling, he touched her cheek gently. "If this is a mistake," he whispered, "it's the only one I've ever wanted to make." She leaned into his palm, her eyes luminous with something between fear and longing. "It's too late," she murmured. "The moment you touched me, the ocean claimed us both." And yet, despite the warning in her voice, she pulled him into her arms as the shimmering world around them shifted, bending to the force of a love that the cold could no longer contain.
The dawn that rose over the frozen sea was unlike any Sedna had ever witnessed. It crept across the horizon in muted golds and bruised violets, as though the sky itself was unsure how to greet the aftermath of what had transpired. The world felt suspended, holding its breath, waiting for the consequence that must inevitably follow the union of a mortal heart with a divine and oceanic soul. Sedna stood at the edge of the trembling ice, her hair lifted by the pale wind, her body still warmed by the memory of his embrace. Though the night had ended, its imprint lingered like a constellation burned into her veins. He stood beside her, shoulders rising and falling in a rhythm that betrayed exhaustion, longing, and a fear he had tried to hide. The storm within the ocean had calmed, but something deeper stirred beneath the surface.
something ancient, vast, and newly awakened. The ice groaned under their feet, not with the threat of collapse, but with the weight of expectation. What they had ignited was not merely a love forbidden, but a shift in destiny that reached far beyond their entwined hands. The world had changed, and it demanded an answer. When Sedna turned to him, her eyes shimmered not with regret, but with the ache of understanding. "The sea is calling," she said softly, her voice carrying a tremor that made the air shiver. "It felt us. It knows what we have done." The ocean had always been her truth, an extension of her soul, the mirror of her emotions. But now it thrummed with a different resonance, neither angry nor welcoming, but searching. It reached for her with ripples of instinctive possession, sensing that its goddess had crossed a threshold no power could ignore. He stepped closer, worry tightening his jaw. "Then let it rage," he whispered. "Let it roar. I won't lose you." His fingers brushed hers, tentative yet resolute, as though holding her could steady the tide gathering in the deep. But Sedna felt the shift inside her body, a slow tide rising through her bones. Her heartbeat echoed in the water, pulling at the currents with involuntary command. She could no longer tell where her own pulse ended and the ocean's began. That fright was a quiet wound across her chest.
"You don't understand," she murmured, though her voice was tender, not accusatory. "Loving me has already bound you to something vast. The sea recognizes you now. It marked you last night, just as it marked me." He stared at her, confusion flickering into fear as the wind shifted and the ice trembled beneath them. The water below him responded to him, just slightly, just enough to send a ripple toward the shore. He didn't notice it, but Sedna did, and her breath caught. Their union had bridged two worlds in a way neither of them fully comprehended. He reached up, cupping her cheek. "If this world wants to punish me for loving you, let it. I'll endure anything. I'll stay with you. I'll follow you into the sea if I must." His words were sincerity, carved from raw devotion, but they struck her with both solace and sorrow. She pressed her forehead against his, closing her eyes as she felt the tide inside her rise again, stronger, more insistent. The ocean was no longer patient. It wanted her. It wanted balance restored, and it sensed that the mortal beside her was now part of that balance, whether willingly or not. The ice cracked suddenly, thin, sharp, decisive. He startled, but Sedna stood unmoving, listening. The sea surged upward in a towering, shimmering column that did not break, but held shape like a creature of water answering a silent summons. It glowed faintly with the blue-green light of deep places untouched by sun or surface. The ocean had never manifested itself this way before. Sedna felt it in her bones, an ancient decree rising through her spine. She took a trembling step back, pulling her hand from his, though it cost her something enormous. "No," he breathed, reaching for her. "Don't pull away." His voice cracked on the last word. She almost obeyed. Every thread of her wanted to, but the column of water swayed, leaning toward her like a living entity. The sea was not asking, it was claiming.
Sedna's transformation had begun the moment she surrendered to him, and now the ocean demanded completion. She turned to him, tears cresting like fragile pearls along her lashes. "If I go with you, the sea will drown this world to anchor me beside you. If I stay with the sea, it will crave only me and let you live." Her voice fractured. "Love is a cruel tide. It never takes only what you offer." His breath hitched as the truth settled heavy between them. Their union had created a fracture between realms, and fractures demanded sacrifice.
He shook his head fiercely. "Then I choose to go with you. Let the sea take me. I'm not afraid." But Sedna was. Not of the sea, but of what it would make of him. Mortals were not meant to dissolve into tides, nor to breathe in depths where ancient memories slept. The ocean could reshape him, but not kindly. It would twist his devotion into something unrecognizable. She could not condemn him to that. So she touched his face with both hands, memorizing the warmth of him, the softness along his jaw, the mortal heartbeat she cherished more fiercely than she had ever dared admit. "If you follow me," she said, her voice breaking, "there will be no you left to remember why you loved me." He froze, breath strangled. She continued in a trembling whisper, "I would rather lose you to the world than lose you to the sea." He shook his head, silent tears forming, but she stepped back again, toward the column of water that pulsed with ancient authority. The sea reached for her like a long-lost child finding its mother. The wind rose, swirling snow around them in a storm that felt like morning. She lifted her hand one final time, fingers trembling. "Remember me," she whispered, "and let that be enough." The water enveloped her in a sweeping arc, gentle yet absolute. He lunged forward, shouting her name, but the ocean held him back with a wave that rose like a shimmering barrier. Sedna's form dissolved into light and water, her silhouette shimmering before sinking into the depths. The ocean calmed instantly, as though appeased at last. The barrier lowered, leaving him collapsed on the ice, hands sunk into the snow, tears blending with the frozen earth beneath him. The wind softened, the sky brightened, but he remained frozen in place, listening to the distant hum of the ocean, a hum that now carried her heartbeat within it. His love had become part of the tides, part of the ancient rhythm that shaped the world. And though he would walk the earth again, every wave that reached the shore would whisper her name, echoing the choice she made, the sacrifice that bound them and separated them in the same breath.
Time bends differently after such love. The stars, once distant, now pulse with hidden rhythms, threading the night with the memory of a desire that defied reason. They shimmer with invisible currents, echoing the tremor of hearts that could not be contained by flesh or ice. The aurora sweeps across the Arctic sky like a silent hymn, ribbons of light tracing the memory of what was shared, acknowledging the union that was brief, forbidden, and eternal.
In these quiet hours before dawn, the world itself seems to remember, as though holding its breath, aware of the story of a mortal and a goddess whose longing reshaped destiny. Mortals speak of love as if it is simple, a connection between two beings measured by hours, kisses, or words. But some loves exist beyond the constraints of time, beyond mercy or understanding, living in the spaces between worlds where desire itself becomes a force of creation. Sedna's love was such a tide, inevitable, vast, and inexhaustible. It pulled through centuries, whispering across oceans, carving its mark into the deep places where human eyes cannot reach. Their story endures not because it ended in union, nor because it dissolved in separation, but because it carries a truth too profound to be ignored, that love, fully realized, alters everything. Those who live by the sea speak of a woman beneath the waves, a goddess whose heart carries the weight of mortal longing. Fishermen pause at the lapping tide. Travelers listen to the whispers of wind across the ice, sensing an invisible pull, a memory embedded in the pulse of the ocean. Some claim they hear a mortal's voice, faint and mingled with the water, a reminder that even when love is divided by fate, its essence persists. The sea carries her name as the stars carry theirs, a delicate symmetry binding the celestial to the human, the divine to the fleeting. Each ripple, each cresting wave is a stanza in their unending song. And yet his memory endures, walking the earth with fragments of her pulse in his chest, the echo of her touch lingering in the hollow spaces of his heart. There is sorrow in such remembrance, a quiet ache that cannot be erased. But there is beauty too. Love that is profound leaves a resonance that mirrors the divine. Mortals are brief, fragile, and finite. Yet within that fragility lies the power to reflect eternity. He became a vessel through which her presence could ripple outward, touching lives she would never see, reshaping the world subtly, persistently. Their tale is retold in waves and wind, in the shimmer of stars and the hush of night. It is not a story of triumph or loss, but a parable of surrender and courage, a testament to desire so deep that it demands both union and sacrifice. Their love defies the binaries of human comprehension. It is both lament and triumph, mirrored in shifting tides and the colors of aurora. The truth it carries is universal. Love is not always a harbor, but a storm, not always comfort, but passage. And yet, even storm and passage are necessary. They transform, teach, and endure. Consider the stars overhead. Each spark is a witness, burning in quiet testimony to what cannot be undone. When the aurora swirls above the Arctic horizon, it bends in memory of their touch, each fold a sigh, each pulse a heartbeat. The universe has no need of their consent, yet it bends in recognition, silently acknowledging that even in absence, love leaves its imprint. Desire, once awakened and embraced, resonates outward, reshaping the fabric of reality. In Sedna and her mortal companion,
the cosmos learns the weight of longing, the depth of sacrifice, and the beauty of desire pursued with courage. The ocean remembers. Every wave that rolls toward the shore hums with her heartbeat, entwined with his memory. To watch the sea is to witness love's persistence, intangible yet undeniable. Humans who dwell along the coasts feel this pull, a subtle gravity that touches hearts, inspiring longing, courage, and reverence. Even without knowing the details of their story, they sense the resonance of passion that once breached the boundaries of mortality and divinity. It is in the pull of the tide, the shimmer of moonlight on water, the quiet, trembling rhythm of waves. Love once lived fully leaves an imprint that time cannot wash away. There is a lesson in this tale. Love that risks everything, that bridges worlds, transforms not just the lovers, but the cosmos itself. Even separation is not an erasure, but a reshaping. The mortal carries her pulse in his chest. The goddess imprints his memory into the rhythm of the ocean. Desire acknowledged and surrendered becomes creation. The stars, the tides, the aurora, they all carry fragments of that union, echoing the courage, vulnerability, and passion that defined it. Mortality does not diminish love, it refines it, turning fleeting warmth into enduring resonance, passion into legend, longing into myth.
In moments of quiet, when wind and waves are still, it is possible to hear the conversation between sky and sea. The stars whisper her name, the tides whisper his, and together they tell of connection, of surrender, and of the courage to love fully, even when fate demands sacrifice. There is serenity in this understanding. Love need not always be possession to endure. Its victory is not in holding, but in resonance. Sedna's story is proof. Surrender, acceptance of consequences, and wholehearted desire imprint the eternal, leaving traces in hearts, seas, and skies. Every night, the aurora paints the sky in her memory. Every swell of the ocean murmurs his. The stars pulse with the rhythm of what was shared. Their union, though brief in time, is eternal in consequence, teaching mortals and immortals alike that love's deepest triumph may not be possession, but transformation. Desire, once embraced, becomes a force that reshapes worlds. Their story is retold not for its conclusion, but for its endurance, echoing in the tides, the aurora, the constellations, and in hearts of those who dare to love without reservation. And so, when one stands at the edge of the world, looking over the waters and into the night sky, there is an unspoken understanding. Love, in its most profound form, is neither fully ours nor entirely lost. It exists in the interplay of longing and surrender, desire and restraint, the mortal and the divine. It is felt in the pulse of the ocean, in the shimmer of aurora, in the distant brilliance of stars. Sedna and her mortal companion may be gone from sight, but they endure, shaping tides, skies, and hearts, their love a melody echoing across time and space. The story is not merely remembered, it is lived repeatedly in hearts that have known impossible longing, in souls that have surrendered to passion with courage and fear. entwined. And the universe bears witness, counting not in hours or years, but in the enduring rhythm of desire. The stars tremble, the waves echo, the aurora bends, a chorus of remembrance, a hymn to longing and courage, a luminous truth of hearts that dared to meet, to touch, and to leave their mark on the cosmos. Love that risks all, that defies boundaries, leaves a resonance time cannot erase. Desire, fully embraced, becomes creation itself, luminous as stars, unending as tides. The legacy of Sedna and her mortal companion lives in every wave, every shimmer of aurora, every heartbeat that beats in memory of longing and sacrifice. It is a reminder that love, in its most intense, courageous, and surrendered form, always leaves a mark on hearts, on the world, and on the rhythm of the universe itself.